Hi, it's Jerry Roberts back with another edition of Newsmakers Journal of the Plague Year. It is Tuesday, August 25th, and today we're talking about the first night of the Republican convention. And we are so honored to have Lou Cannon with us, the Dean of American Political Writers, great historian, and of course, biographer of Ronald Reagan. Lou, it's good to see you. It's been a while.
Good to be with you, Jerry.
So, given the constraints that we're all under, obviously, because of the pandemic and having to have a virtual convention, even at that, I thought that the first night of the Republican affair was really not a convention. I mean, for one thing, there's no platform. They didn't adopt a platform. I'm just wondering what you thought of it. And secondarily, what do you think Ronald Reagan would have thought of it?
I think Ronald Reagan would have been as bewildered about it as I am. But I think he would have liked some parts of it. I think he would have liked Tim Scott's speech.
Yes.
No, like Herschel Walker's speech. It was kind of, I'm wondering about the platform. We've often covered platforms and we say routinely that nobody pays much attention to the platform. The Republicans carried this to the ultimate. If nobody pays attention to the platform, why have one? But I thought it was a kind of a mixture of trying to humanize Donald Trump and The Empire Strikes Back. The Empire Strikes Back's part of it, to me, the low point of the convention night was Donald Trump saying that the Chinese Communist Party wants you to vote for Joe Biden. I mean, that is, that's beyond anything Joe McCarthy would have said, and it's so ridiculous on its face. It's a kind of to me, that was a touchstone. The fact that you could say that, and nobody even commented much on it afterwards, except Mark Shields, who did comment on it, that he said Joseph McCarthy has made his reappearance in the form of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But it was an advertisement of how partisan we've become. On the other hand, I think there were kind of moments in there that people should pay attention to. And I thought the humanizing speeches were some of those moments. Trump isn't going to win any significant number of minority voters. Everybody knows that, and including Trump. But he doesn't have to win a significant number of minority voters. If he can get his numbers up, 2% and duplicate his numbers among white voters in Pennsylvania, he could win Pennsylvania, for instance. I mean, Biden's ahead by 6 now. That's really not an overwhelming margin. And I think the other thing was that the Republicans really want to go back to the recent past. They talked as if the coronavirus at times, they talked about in the past tense, and they kept talking about the economy, which was indeed very robust. And I think they're paying attention to the poll numbers. Gallup's most recent poll, for instance, which shows a little Trump bump, 42%, sort of what he has been he was down in the 30s in June and July. He's back to his normal. But on issues, it shows a wide discrepancy. I think the number was something like 63-36 on the handling the coronavirus. I mean, Trump, disapproval. Whereas on the economy, he's nearly even with Biden. He's 2 points behind Biden. So obviously, from a Republican point of view, you want to get the coronavirus out of people's heads and go back to the way it was and suggest, or they do not much more suggest, we will go back to that kind of economy if we reelect Trump and when the coronavirus ends.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it was kind of thematically, it was a little bit of a muddle. And I agree with you about the Senator Tim Scott speech. I thought was very good, and I thought Herschel Walker was very good, and even that Democratic guy from Georgia, the state representative, was all right. But I wondered whether that was as much an attempt to get black votes as it is to sort of ease Trump's racist identification among white suburban voters, saying, "Oh, he's not really that bad." But then you had this couple from St. Louis that were waving guns out at the protesters, telling you, they're coming for your home, they're gonna take over the suburbs. I mean, that wasn't very subtle at all.
Well, one message is getting in the way of the other.
Yeah.
The one message is Trump's really a good guy. You've been just don't believe all this fake news that the media and the Democrats are spreading. The other is that no, he's exactly what we've been portraying. The couple outside St. Louis, I think, really expressed the view of the Trump base very strongly and very well, and it was kind of scary, at least to me. I think we've had from both conventions, we've had messages that are ostensibly at one group that are really at another. I think you're absolutely right that the messages from Walker and Senator Scott and the Georgia Assemblyman were not as much directed as black people or people of color as they were white who are undecided. Now that's not a lot of people, but it's larger than the margins in these battleground states was last time. And I think the Democrats did something of the same thing. They put all these Republicans on. Well, they're not going to get Republicans, but they might get some of the squishy, soft independents like me, who voted a Republican in the past sometime. That's what they were aiming at. And in a sense, there's masters of deception, I guess you could apply to both conventions. I thought the Democrat convention last week pulled it off much better on the first night than the Republicans, and they were also patriotic, a lot of flags, a lot of children singing. Who's against children singing, and the Republican first night, although it did have its moments, was discordant, I thought, between and I think fear wins out over hope on the Republican message. I don't think the Democrats are helped by what happened in Kenosha last night. No. I don't think they're helped by what's happening in Portland. And I do think that the winning or ultimate winning strategy, or they hope it to be a winning strategy of the Republicans, is going to try to make people afraid of what happens if Biden and the Democrats get in.
Well, some of the rhetoric, and you mentioned some of it, they want to destroy America. Joe Biden, the fellow from Cuba, the Cuban guy, he's going to bring in anarchy and communism. The terrifying prospect of Joe Biden coming after everything we own. They're going to have MS-13 move in next door. I mean, it's almost, I think you and I listen to that and it just seems almost hyperbolic, but I'm guessing that for his base, that's a very welcome message.
I think it's reassuring to his base, but he needs more than his base to win this election. And I think I think he might, if Bernie Sanders was the nominee, an avowed socialist, he'd be halfway there. I mean, even Nikki Haley who gave a good speech, I thought, talked about the prospects of socialism winning in America. I think Joe Biden as a socialist is a hard sell. I mean, Joe Biden beat the left wing of the Democratic Party to win his nomination. And I think it seems to me they're trying out different themes on Biden. The first was, the Sleepy Joe theme, that his acuity isn't there. That didn't work too well in view of Biden's speech. And I think they're now sort of going back to try to scare you. And we're seeing only the tip of the iceberg. I mean, these people have a huge, huge buy on Facebook and on all the social media. And and if you're told that Joe Biden is going to deliver you to the Chinese communist for night after night, I don't know. I think they've got a chance with that line of rhetoric, which I think is baloney.
Yeah, and going back to the Kenosha and the riots that have followed the most recent shooting of a black man by a white police officer, and the video there is really, in George Floyd,
Hard to see.
it's
Hard to
very,
watch.
very hard to see. But, the argument they're making is, well, they want to defund the police. And even though Biden has said quite clearly, no, I'm not for defunding the police, the fact that that slogan is out there associated with the Black Lives Matter movement, I think it makes it easier for Trump to go after them on that. And that combined with, that dad from the Parkland High School thing whose daughter was shot, I thought that was such an emotional speech, and talking about how, the Obama-Biden police reforms had led to this was very effective. So I would expect that that's an area where he's going to really continue to attack. And if they are trying out themes, I'll bet you that's the one that's working the best.
The
Defunding the police attack.
having covered a number of campaigns, candidates and their strategists like to think that they're in control of events, but they're really not. And that goes for both parties. I'm sure that however much Trump now dislikes Steve Bannon, he didn't particularly welcome him being indicted for ripping off Bill the Wall contributors on the eve of the convention. And I don't think that, I think on the Democratic side, what you have to worry about is some real eruption in a city, just before the election. And that's not something that, nobody knew, I'm sure that even the police officer who did it didn't know he was going to shoot this guy in the back. That wasn't planned a day or two before. That happened in the course of responding to a call. We don't know when, how many more of those there are going to be, and we don't know how many more embarrassments to President Trump there are going to be either.
What did you think of Trump using the White House as a stage set? That's something, he's broken a lot of norms. I have to say that one really bothered me.
I guess because I'm so darned old, and I know that FDR used it in 1940, and I guess I didn't. I thought I didn't give a complete pass on it, but I thought the White House is all he's got, and naturally he's going to use it. What's bothered me more than the Trump giving a speech from the White House is the Secretary of State giving a speech while he's on an official trip representing the United States. They've gone to great lengths to say the government isn't paying for any of this; they're paying. But I don't really think that's the point. The point is that when you're the Secretary of State, you're overseas. You're not representing the Republicans or the Democratic Party. You represent the United States of America. That to me is much more bothersome than. Because Trump, after all, is president. It's.
Well, you covered that 1940 campaign. I missed that one, so I'll give you.
I was 7 years old.
I'll give you. All right, I want to go back to the no platform thing again, because the other thing that I found interesting, and the Democrats buried Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter, wasn't even there visually, but they were there. The elders of the party, the former presidents. Not only was George W. Bush not there, they were only living president. It seemed to me he probably wouldn't have been very welcome there either. And it goes to this thing about, it just seems like the Republican Party more and more is becoming just the Trump party. The platform is, we're going to go along with Trump's America First agenda, whatever that is, whatever he decides it is. How do you feel about where the party is?
I think the convention is representative of where the Republican Party is under Trump. We haven't, at most conventions, you have former presidents, former big shots of the party laying hands on whoever is the nominee of the moment. But Trump hasn't had support from George W. Bush for a long time. The last two candidates of the Bush and Romney with McCain sandwich in there. Well, he didn't have any. He and McCain were foes, and Cindy McCain winds up doing a narration against him at the Democratic convention. Romney has been outspoken and I think courageous, because it takes courage to go against your peers, even if you're a former presidential nominee, and he has not hesitated to speak out against Trump. George W. Bush has done his best to totally ignore him. So it's not like the convention is any different from the reality. I think it mirrors the reality, which is Trump alone, and and Trump is become the whole focus of the Republican Party. Candidates who have opposed Trump have been defeated in various primaries. So it's either you're going up or down. You're sink or swim with Trump. Could be a good dominating good slogan.
Trump and the Trump family, because they're, about every other speaker is related to him somehow. That his oldest son last night gave that pretty dark, I thought, speech. And then his girlfriend, the former wife of the governor of California, which I don't even try to do that, Kimberly Guilfoyle, was doing kind of an Evita act out there. I mean, she was ranting.
Well, I thought Kimberly was entertaining, at least. I thought Donald Trump was the low point of the evening. I just really, he's out here with what credentials does he have? Kimberly, she's been a television host. Trump has the only thing that Donald Trump can truly say. They put those PBS, which I watch this on, likes to put the things before them. Scott, elected to House. The only thing you could truthfully put alongside Donald Trump was, son of the president. He had no credentials. His speech was mean spirited, and I sort of enjoyed Kimberly's ranting and shouting. I thought she seemed much more interesting to me than her fiance.
And then in terms of how they handled the pandemic and the virus, I would have thought, and obviously I'm not in tune with the Republican strategists, there would have been some mention or some notice given to the almost 180,000 people who have died now. But it was just like, it wasn't even part of the reality. It was, in fact, he acted so quickly and so fast that, he saved millions of lives. Do you think that's a message that's gonna work for him on the virus?
No, I don't. I think he's got a chance with his demonizing of the Democrats. He's even got a chance with his economic message, because Americans are fair-minded, even if Trump isn't. They do accept the argument that the economy was in good shape before the pandemic. But what they do not accept, it's much lower than his 36%, which is lower than his approval rating of his handling of the pandemic. And I thought the way they did it at last night at the convention was of a piece with how he's dealt with the pandemic all along. There was no grasp of its reality. There was no strategy. This is how we're, if a different kind of president might have said, this is how we're going to get back to the days of the full economy that I brought you, although the economy was roaring when he became president, which he never mentions. But he sort of pushes the coronavirus as being pushed from public view, being pushed, and it's not realistic the way they're dealing with it, but neither is his policy's been realistic. There's no sort of central thing. What is Trump's policy in the coronavirus? You can't do that in a sentence.
No, you can't. Well, he doesn't. It's to give it to the states, I guess, is what they were doing. There was one short speech very early on, and I don't even know how many people would have seen it, but it was a teacher who was railing against teachers union, but she sort of broadened the attack, and she made it all about unions. Unions are subverting our republic, which was with Michigan in play and Pennsylvania in play. I thought that was kind of a strange message. Certainly right to work is some, a traditional Republican position, but to say unions are subverting our republic, I thought was a little discordant.
Generally speaking, Republicans don't like to celebrate their anti-unionism at these conventions. And maybe I'm just saying this because I missed that speech you're talking about. I read about it, but I think I don't think they didn't elevate that to any
No.
place of you had to be literally watching every minute of the convention to see it, and no other speaker mentioned it. So I think that goes down into the aberration, the aberration in an aberrant convention.
Yeah. And then we had Trump described as the bodyguard of Western civilization, which I thought was kind of getting into Kim Jong-il territory in terms of the dear leader.
Well, I mean, Nikki Haley said that when we were, I can't remember the exact phrase, but she was telling where we were, and that she was praising Trump for engaging North Korea. The truth is, North Korea now has many more nuclear missiles than it had when Trump took office. No one other than Trump and his acolytes seem to think that engagement has produced much. And I was struck by the way they've done the treaty stuff too. The NAFTA, which was a the boogeyman in some ways of the last Trump convention. NAFTA got very little mention. Yeah. And Donald Trump mentioned it, but that's because I think most people know that the treaty that Donald Trump had signed is very similar to NAFTA. I mean, they ripped up one treaty, and an incident, they use language from it. I don't think many people know that. The language that's new in it is from the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Pact, which they walked away from. It has had good environmental and protection of labor, and that has been incorporated almost verbatim into the NAFTA tact. So I thought the trade thing was kind of the trade thing almost didn't make it into the speeches. They gummed up the trade, but there weren't. Maybe Trump will take credit for it in his speech, but nobody was really taking credit for it last night.
Yeah. So this sort of kicks off, I guess, the fall campaign, and it's an odd campaign. Going to be so much of it virtual. What's your sense of where the race is right now? I mean, the polls are all giving Biden a consistent lead, but as you know, it's all about the states. It's all about the electoral votes, particularly Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania.
Well, I think the lesson of 2016, the lesson of 2016 isn't that the polls were wrong, as many people think. So Hillary was a couple of points ahead in the national polls, and she won the popular vote. There wasn't enough focus by enough of the media on the battleground states, and this time there's, if anything, an excessive focus. I fully expect somebody to be surprised by the result of some non-battleground state, because these 6 states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Florida, North Carolina, and Arizona, I think I've named them all, yes, are getting in just overwhelming coverage. And all of the polls there, except the ones that Charlie Cook says are good polls, are showing similar things, which is that overall Biden's got a 10, 11-point lead. That's not a lead that I think Trump could make up. But in the battleground states, he's got leads of 5 and 6 points, or no lead at all, really, in Arizona, a tiny one in North Carolina. So I think that the election's still in play. I mean, you'd have to, if you didn't care about what either of them did or said, and you were a betting person, you'd have to bet on Biden, but you wouldn't want to lay long odds on him, because this is an America in which we are so far apart on so many things, and we believe, and we've demonized Trump, demonized all of his opponents, and now the Democrats have demonized Trump. And I don't see. I think the Democrats win. Joe Biden is going to have a very difficult task doing what he promised to do last week at the convention, which is uniting America. Because I think the campaign is going to divide us more than unite us, and we're already pretty divided.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Lou Cannon, speaking to us from his. You staying safe up there? Everything okay?
I'm in Summerlin. I guess no place is safe. I pulled a muscle the other day that sort of immobilized me. I mean, you'd think you'd be safe in your own house, wouldn't you? But anyway.
What'd you do? You try to go to first or third on a single or something?
That was the equivalent thereof. My eldest son says I try to tackle too big a wave. But in any case, are you and your family all
well? We're all good. I never get out, but it beats the alternative. I think.
I wanted to ask you something, and that is,